Well, that was interesting, adding a good spirit to this. And guess what? It just dropped out before it went out. Did y'all hear me say that Mercury was in the seventh house? I mean, in Taurus in the seventh house. Did y'all hear that? That's the last thing that as soon as Miz went out, I said, wow, Mercury is really working its thing. Someone had put in the chat room that Mercury was in this Taurus, which Mark Miz is a Taurus, and in the seventh house, which is the Libra's house, which is my house, right? And both Taurus and Libra ruled by Venus, right? So I'm like, all right, that's what's happening. And wow. All right, people are coming back in actually. People are coming back in on the line. So that's good. But whoever's here is just meant to be for what's left of this. Is it the same link? It's the same link. It did. That's why I'm saying something's wrong.
When it got cut, I was telling Brother Mika, I said, you know what? Y'all was just going in so hard and it was just fire. And the universe said, you know what? Cut it. Y'all giving them too much. And it just
Yes, people are coming back in now. Jay, you right though. We was giving it's a lot of fire on this tonight. But it's almost similar to what Minka said when he was mentioning about the temples. That as soon as they was doing the thing and doing something right, here they come whispering in their ear to try to stop them from doing it, saying that's that negative energy, you know. So, and some people might not get back in. I mean, they might not want to come back. And
Islam.
Islam, is that you, Amazite?
Yes, mother, yes.
Yes, it dropped out on us. I'm waiting for people to kind of come back in so we can do this thing the way it's supposed to be.
I got one quick
So
question, if you don't mind.
go ahead. We still got Mink on the line. I'm on the line, and Miz will be on the line in a minute. I think. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so earlier you had presented a little excerpt or insert about the consular courts, right? The only way a consular court can be effective, right? Not saying Moors, I'm just saying the concept of a consular court, they would have to be in another country or another territory. That's my first question, correct?
Yes.
Okay, my second question is
We're not foreigners on our own land. Pardon me, go ahead. Actual facts, though, you're correct.
right. So if we not foreigners on our own land, there's no place with no territory on this plan that we can be foreigners, correct?
True. Now, if you can, just let me drop a measure on you real quick. I don't mean to stop you. You know what I mean? I just demonstrated this. It might have been last week or 2 weeks ago. All of us, to the way that you're thinking, goes into what I was just demonstrating before we got cut off. Because your natural divine order is giving you these thoughts. Now I'm gonna tell you how that's in line with what I'm about to get. We all got it on our documents. AA222141, right?
Correct.
It's on nationality cards. It's on proclamation papers. It says exactly what you just said. The consular
Correct.
court, they don't have jurisdiction, and we're
Correct.
not in our own land. The consular court was abolished. That's what. That's not what deprives them of jurisdiction. That's what has been documented, so they know in this day and age that they don't have jurisdiction. See, we all running around with that on our paperwork, but it's notated, and it runs from 141 all the way through 170 something. Because what it did was take the statutes at large and or the codification of the treaty, and it basically runs each chapter down to specify which jurisdiction that they're being stripped of. So when it says, if a Moor should go out and harm an American, that, and if a European should wound the Moor, it codified that in the Statute of Large. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And
I'm very
with
familiar.
the AA 22141 is within those. So it basically goes into if a murder should take place, if a violation of someone's vessel at sea, etc., etc. So it not only says that the consular court is abolished because the United States doesn't have jurisdiction at Morocco, but it specifies what instances that entails. But I just wanted to drop that. But that's a part of what I was just demonstrating. You had to be in divine order to come out and say something like that. But
Right.
pardon me, you had
Not
some more.
And here's the thing that I
right.
also
So
wanted to
so
ask, because you talk about constant curse, and I mean cut you off, but this is on topic. There is the issue with, like I was saying, or the sister had verified and confirmed earlier that the Supreme Court had already made that decision that you weren't to be a citizen, and consular court is like contradicting something that was made by the Supreme Court. So my question is, if that maybe is a concern that the Supreme Court would have, and thus something that may have come from an executive from a department or executive order to allow these organized bodies that claim to, naturalize Moorish national into their system. That's something that was something that I would think would come from the executive department. Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's all kind of confusion out, and I just wanted to make sure that the question was already put out there, so that way we all can get the answers and benefit from it.
okay. What I was saying, the last part where I was going at, so everybody can understand the consular court, the way the definition that we looked at, right, is not a Moorish venue, right? We agreed on that. Basically, that consular court is every so-called de jure government should have a consular court in another nation territory. So um, basically, this is Morocco. So another nation would have a consular court on their behalf, not ours. So some more see the position that is in the reverse.
Indeed.
Okay, that's why I was just leading up because some people um, still might be confused on that and really think that's a venue, but that's a venue for a foreign nation to have representation in another nation in layman's term. And I yield the floor.
No,
It's
you're right, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up because that goes back to what I was saying earlier, like being that what you know. So we go in there and we're speaking all of this law and we're speaking all of this under an intelligent tone, etc. However, we're sitting here saying that we're foreigners on our own land because we need consular officers and diplomats and etc. How they looking at us? Like, is this your inherited land or not? Like, because if you guys do wrong, there's a Chinese consulate on this landmass. There's a German consulate, etc., etc. Like you just pointed out, it's for other nations when they're on foreign soil. So they could go in there with that argument. But how are we going in there with that argument when we talking about this on our inherent land? Like, do you believe that or do you not believe it? We can't.
I don't believe it, man. I think they got it mixed up when they look at the treaties and it says consul and then they look at consulate and they interchange it and substitute for the same thing. That's what I think is going on with them particular Moors that have consulate.
Not even just that. This is a tricky thing, and we've went over it a few times, but I mean, study. The the fact of people having the ideology of foreign, they need to understand that it's foreign to the U.S. corporate structure. It's not foreign to anything else other than that. So what I see is people getting those things cross contaminated as well.
Indeed.
I'm not you that listens, I'm a foreigner. No, you're not. As soon as you say you're a foreigner and you don't clarify it the way that I just did, you're telling them that you're not on your inherit land. You're telling them that you're from somewhere else. And you don't really know that this is Morocco. And that they're foreigners. And that they're naturalized and not you. We're foreign to the U.S. corporate structure ideology. And nothing more, nothing less.
Well, can I ask this then? Say this, and that would also mean that you're saying that this is not your land. On top of which is why I tell people to, don't claim Aboriginal indigenous to the land if you think that you need a consular court, because that's what it's saying, and they know it.
Indeed.
And that's why I think it grows so big. We could say it grows so big because people don't know, but like we're comprehending it right now, and yet it's gone big, and people have again the division of 5 or 6 different consular groups, and they're all in the wrong place, and they'll let that go because in the end you can't claim anything if you really think that you are a foreigner on this land, because the United States of America is operating on this land. It's not America. And I think people look at it as if this is their stuff, which means they just gave it away. Islam, I just wanted to add that. So I think we're getting it. And consulate general is not a Moorish title. It
I was about
belongs to, no, it is not. No.
that's the spirit. I was about to go there.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
I said I was about to go there next. That's the spirit working through us. We in the ethers together. I was about to go there next.
Go ahead,
Um,
brother. No, go ahead. It's so emphatic, man, that people get this.
listen, we can't now. Listen, this is another thing where people cross contaminate, right? Because we know if we're being true to what was brought to us and what was taught to us, then we know that we should be adhering to Islamism, right? So if we're adhering to Islamism in principle, would that make it more fitting for us to have Arabic titles for our officers, or would it make it more fitting to have English, Dutch, or German or Spaniard titles for our officers? I mean, it's as simple as that. Are we out of bounds for having or attempting to have representatives for our people? No. Every nation has that. That's what the Grand Sheik is for. If you're dealing with the temple, that's what the vizier for. When you're dealing with the rudder and sextant and the chain of command from the Great Seal, those offices were revitalized so that we can use them in this day and age, and that's what they're for. The Mufti or the Sharif, we're not speaking their language. We're speaking our language. So is it more fitting for us to say, well, I mean, it derived from us when they say sheriff, but let's take it to something else. Let's take it to a constable. Should we say constable or should we say Sharif or Mufti?
Hmm.
Should we say police?
We
Cop?
should stick. We should stick with our own culture, man.
You see what I'm saying? It's that simple. It's just that simple. You want to run around calling muftis cops, then you're in line with calling your ministers and or your representatives consular generals. It's the same concept, the same exact concept. Like the brother said, it's not our culture. So unless you want to say Minka's not a mufti, he's a cop or he's a constable, and
It's
our muftis aren't sharifs. They're cops, they're constables. They're fine. If that's your ideology, it's not right and exact, but you might as well go ahead and run with that if that's what you're doing. Because you're taking something that is from their language or their culture, which is a key word. Thank you, brother. Their culture, and you making it your own. Are they doing that with us? I mean, some of their stuff is derived from our stuff, and they stole it. But for the most part, you can distinguish when they're speaking about them and their customs and culture, and when we're speaking. Pastor, are we going to start calling Grand Sheiks pastors now? No, man, like, for real. Like, I mean, the concept is not wrong. It's really the language that they're using that goes along with the concept because all law is specific. So now when you're saying consulate, when you're saying consulate general, when you're saying foreign, in the Black's Law and in the Law Dictionary, those things mean something. So you're going to make them mean what you want them to mean now?
Yes,
Concept,
that's a
don't
good.
get me wrong. The concept is right. And we all should be doing that or something similar to that in the territories that we in. If you're the only one around your territory that's dealing with this truth that we're building on right now, then you're not hitting the hedges and the highways hard enough. Because you shouldn't be the only one. You're not waking enough people up. If there's only two or three of you, then move to multiply that. And in doing so, you see, the way that I was taught and I was brought up, and I'm sure people can relate. When you tell someone not to partake or eat something, then you kind of need to provide a alternative remedy. You taking something off the table, off the plate. You gonna leave me starving on that portion, or you gonna replace it with something? So we all know what's going on with the temples, and we're not telling people still not to go in there. If you want to go in there and get your experience, we did. We're not telling you, man, no, it's not by being told. Go in, you go see what's up. Now, either you take what you've learned and move on that, you go in there and see what's going on, and you don't like it, and you back out. That doesn't relieve us of chapter 25. We still need to be bound together. So if we all in the same territory, okay, we may not be able to lawfully go and get charters, but does that stop us from building together? Does that stop us from having study sessions or demonstrating class or teaching the children and demonstrating in numbers when we got to go out? When your brothers in adversity, do what?
A system,
Position.
a system out.
When your sister's in trouble, what you supposed to do? It's written.
Forsake or not.
It's not
Forsake or
what
not.
Mika. This ain't what Mika's saying, brothers and sisters. The law is right there. So whether we're a part of a temple or not, that doesn't relieve us of chapter 25. So the remedy is find a way to unify and let the bonds of affection unite thee, like it said in chapter 25.
Yeah.
Even if there's no adversity or no trouble to speak of, we're still supposed to be fellowshipping and bonding together. However, if adversity or trouble does come up, we just came from the law and said what we're supposed to do in that instance. That doesn't relieve us of that because we're not a part of the temple. I don't care if you go to a study group or whatever it is, and we're not telling you something that we think is a good idea. We're telling you things that we have to demonstrate because not being a part of the temple doesn't make you any less active. Especially once you wake up. Like you wake up and then you go and let's say your nearest temple is 2 hours away from wherever you domicile at, and you don't have a way to get there. Are you not supposed to demonstrate? To me, that sounds like you need to go and wake some people up around your way. So you know. I mean, in the meantime, you will have to ride out by yourself. We've all done that before too.
Mm,
But
yeah.
at some point, you're gonna have to wake some people up at the edges of the highways so that you have more people. And so, oh man, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me this whole time I've been hit over the head and I've been thinking this way and this really how it go? And now you got somebody else. They're gonna go tell somebody. They might bring a third woman, or you two might be riding together for a minute until your next person comes. That's what I suggest. I don't suggest nobody going out and running and going to, because if you go out and you construct a temple without going through the protocol, you in violation of the law. There's a protocol that comes along with that. So I'm not encouraging that. So while I'm not encouraging you not to go to the temple, I'm not encouraging you to build your own. Maybe you need to go to, if you want a temple, maybe you need to go to these places so that you can learn the protocol, so that you and your grand body can form and do what you need to do. But you can't just erect it out of the blue. Like that's against the law. That's not how it's written. So the alternative to that, honestly, we need to have some tribes. Until we can put the nation together how it needs to be put together, you need to have some tribes. That's what we started with anyway. That's what a nation is anyway. If you want to be technical, talking about um the so-called Indians as they call them, all of the tribes, they're individual nations that came together under one demonstration. We got to go back. Remember, we spoke about earlier going back to the minds of our ancient foremothers and forefathers. That's a part of that. If that's what needs to be done, get your tribe together. Have somebody, do secretarial work and be the record keeper. And if y'all gonna have duels, have somebody be the treasurer. Whoever is the most into, the defense and things of that nature, that's your mufti or your grand mufti. Whoever is most representative and most, intelligible and who can deal with these people in the intelligent tone, that may be your chief or your sheep or grand sheep. I mean, you break it down to the tribal if that's what needs to be done. You
Me.
can't just not do the work. So what are we gonna do? You go in the temple and you can't get what you want out of the temple. You can't build your own temple until you learn the protocols of building the temple. So what do? You stay inactive? That don't make sense, though. I hope it don't make sense to you. It don't make sense to me. So there has to be some other solution. And again, I'm telling you from experience, from all territories that I've been through, be it the Carolinas or Virginia or New York territory or New Jersey territory, we got a band of brothers and sisters that's ready to go. We train to go. Let's go.
Facts. Mink, can you hear me, bro?
Yes, sir.
Yo, fam. I appreciate everything you saying, even down to the microcosm aspect of tribalism, if necessary, right? Like that's what it feel like it has become in a sense, right? But we know that those fractions make up the whole of a nation.
That's a
And
fact.
yeah, like it has always been like that. Like your cousin got their own thing going on, and your brother, sister, mother, everybody doing them for the benefit of everybody. People are doing what they're doing. But I wanted to ask you in that same concept of the microcosm of tribalism and you being from the region, you was just speaking about a band of people from different regions, Virginia, Carolinas, Jersey, and why. Coming from that region where Noble Drew Ali first established the temple, what is Moore's divine and national movement of the world? An emphasis on divine and national movement, right? And just tracing the lineage of where Noble Drew Ali started out. Even if we was to take it to tribalism and say, yo, I'm from the Lenape region or the Jersey region, like to you, what does that mean as far as its origin in New Jersey, bro? Which you kind of answered when you was talking about us not being relieved of our obligation of chapter 25 and that being a divine thing, right? And that relating to Noble Drew Ali and where he established the first temple in his missionary work include tribalism, nationalism. When you hear Moore's divine and national movement, how would you explain that?
It's all of that collectively. Still starting back though with you, like you are the divine and the national in one, and in order for you to add on to any microcosm, being a tribe, a group, a sect, etc., you have to come with your divinity and your nationalism. So starting with you and then branching out to your very close connection that's relative to the Moorish divine national movement, be it a temple, a tribe. It makes up all of those names. The Great Seal is part of the Moorish divine national movement. Crack of Destiny, the Washita, anything that was birthed out of the spirit that Allah gave Noble Drali to revitalize us with. Anything that was brought out of that and has any of the ideology of that in any way, shape, or form, be it group, tribe, temple, school, whatever, across the whole planet, makes up the Moorish Divine National Movement. But the people are the movement, not the document, not the building, not any of that. Remember, it starts within us. So in order for us to have a divine and national movement, we must be divine and national. If we're not divine and national, then we can't add on to a divine and national. I can't recall the chapter offhand, but they were speaking about um, traveling with the empty car in the Quran. The it is relative to that because all you have there is chapter one. You have the remnants of the fallen man, which is fleshly things, but you don't have the spirit and the soul to actually orchestrate what it is that you're supposed to be divinely moving in accord with. So it starts with us, and then we group, then we may get a bigger group, or we may band with other groups in light of chapter 25. But it's still got to start with you. If me and or Miz and I and the mother aren't coming properly, and we're not coming correct in spirit, then we couldn't really say that we're contributing to the movement because we're not coming correct. We're not divine. We're not natural. So it has to start, even with a group as small as ours and other people that you guys may not see that contribute. If our little faction isn't right and exact, then we're not moving in a divine and national. So we don't really have a place divinely because it has to be both. So we sit here, we kicking all these national principles, but our spirits are empty and our spirits ain't right. And we're not a part of the divine and national movement. You need both of them to go together. So again, with that being said, whether it's a small movement, I know there's a lot of controversy. I'm gonna bring up an example of that. Two of them. There's a lot of controversy with what the brother Gambada, but look at the Zulu Nation. So while we talk about a divine and national movement, I want you, anybody that's familiar with the Zulu Nation, I want you to think about how that's done. Our chapters in the Bronx, all the way to Los Angeles, California, all the way to Australia, all on one accord, in some way, shape, or form. Of that same thing. We got brothers and sisters that's just dedicated to Zulu and what Zulu entails. And you have some that's dedicated to the hip hop movement. Some of them are rappers. Some of them dance. Some of them do graffiti. Everybody brings their own measure to the table, from Terry and complexion. Brings their own measure to the table. But at the end of the day, no matter if it's a group of three, all the way in the back hills of Georgia or Arkansas, or it's a group of 300, a Zulu nation, one accord, one mother. Breasts have given them some. Conceptually, they were birthed from the same thing, and they kind of went on their own little wave and got on what they got on, but they all agreed that we're all Zulu nation. On the flip side, I come out of the gang world myself. It's the same ideology. So while we all might unite under one name or one color or a few colors, from where I stand right now, I could go all the way to one of the other four corners of the world and say certain things to certain people, and if they're relative to what I was representing, then I fall in line. Because it's a movement. The only difference, not the only difference, the main difference with what we're talking about now is that it's divine. That's the main difference. But the concept is the same. Whether it's a group of 3 gang members or whether it's a group of 3,000 gang members. You go from New Jersey all the way to California and any states in between, there's a camaraderie. If there isn't an immediate camaraderie, because different people have different ideology and different motives and all that. However, for the most part, you can ignore the Masons, our Masonic son, same concept. From here to there, to over there, you say say certain things, or you wearing certain things, or you do certain movements, or you got your ring on, or whatever. Boom, you in the game. So that's what I get when we're talking about the Morris Divine National Movement of the world. It's something that makes us all relatives, no matter which corner of the world that we come from.
Can I add that to that because everything is on point? So the Moorish Divine and National Movement of the World was coined by the Prophet around 1920, no, 1916, let's say, in his first few years. The Moorish Divine and National Movement of the World, you would look at it as like an umbrella, and anybody doing the work to uplift fallen humanity or whatever they're doing, as he's saying, they are part of that. They come under that, but it is not a place. The Moorish Divine and National Movement of the World is not something anybody should go and try to find a seal for. It's not something that you can touch or whatever like that, because we the people, make it what it is by our activity. It is the umbrella. Now, it does say of the world, like he said, it reaches out wherever, however far it is, because remember, the prophet said this is the uniting of what? Asia, which is the whole planet, really, because the whole planet is called Asia.
I did want to make a comment about, I appreciate what you say, even using the Zulu as an example. But I wanted to also highlight, as far as even them being put on to being Moors and Zulu Kemetic Moors. Shout out to all of them because the reality is some people never really even been in the building with those who have been a part of that movement itself. What we call Zulus, Zulu Nation, Zulu Kemetic Moors. From our experience, like we literally been able to see these brothers and sisters in the building and you know what I mean, vibe. And some people don't know what it's like to actually, be in a building where there's people unified for some common cause. With the divine and national movement, like you say, there's many examples where certain ideologies or structures could be taken from.
That is so true. And also, when yeah, so we can go to the hedges and highways for a minute. When we were out on the corner at 125th and 5th, it was that zoo, in fact, Bambata, who would come to the meetings because we were asked to come into another place, a little small T-shirt shop on 128th, and be inside. And we grew out of it so fast, and a lot of business was coming to that T-shirt shop because people were coming. So everybody grew. We were growing, and then it was the Zulu Nation Bambata from there, that from the Zulu Nation, who had a connection with the National Theater, who went there and actually got us set up to be able to come into the National Theater where we were for 12 years, and they also held their meetings there as well. So that in itself is also how you grow with commonalities. This is how you grow your community and your nation. You start with something. And one of the things that you start with in your community is obviously a school for the children. And I believe that that is the reason why, one of the directives was to have, that the prophet gave, was to have that all temples should have a school, right? Which they don't have. So that's another failure on their part. But now, after what was shown earlier in the demonstration tonight, like, who, what school would you go? What would they teach if they had a school? What they are supposed to teach is, of course, divine is first, and then the history, because the prophet said you have an illustrious history. All of those things would have or ought to have been included in this Moorish Divine and National Movement of the world right here, and they were not. And so generations have seemed to have suffered from it. But this is why it did what it did tonight, to say, look, that's it. This is what it is. This is where the division stems from. And Minka, what you're adding about that does not mean you're not active is beautiful, because it's all in the message that the prophet brought as to who we are and what we are supposed to be doing. And we'll join up with our, remember the bonds of affection that bind you when you go out into the world. So that's we could be, but divine law governs all events, so much further in not having to seek so much information, because believe me, we got a life and a wealth time of learning to do, all of us, and having an institution where we can curricularize the information and have schools set up. It's still, because that was one of the other questions, why is it still important? It is still ultra important for the children, for the families coming up, so that they don't have to go through what we're going through and be beat up and be exploited and conspired upon, because they come out knowing how to go out into the world.
Well, the points that you guys are making, I saw that firsthand. That's kind of why I brought up the Zulu nation. I'm a part of the Zulu Clan, of course. So the
Okay.
fact that he needs a lane, um, not only for those who are already proclaimed, but for those who don't know about more science to learn it. I can attest to that. So I'm glad that you brought that up and you followed up with what you followed up with.
Good.
Um, that helps me to emphasize my point. Like I'm not speaking from the outside and guessing, what the functions are of the Zulu Nation. Like I actually, you know, subscribe to them. So I know that what I'm saying is relative to what we're demonstrating. So I just want to add that.
All right. Now let me just say this so we can get this in. I have found that, and you on the line may have found it as well, that when it comes to talking about the law, the difference between the Constitution, law of the land, and the Constitution and bylaws of the temple. The reason why that was brought up is because people will say, well, yeah, the prophet said to enforce the Constitution, but they don't realize that they're talking about the national concert. I don't know why they don't realize it. We just put up on the board tonight all of the things he said. Some people will say, well, he alluded to it. Well, it's very clear that that was what we're to do. And he explained in his writings why. And we understand that. But they'll say, well, no, he means to enforce the Constitution and bylaws of the temple. And they won't make any efforts or moves towards uh, enforcing the law of this land. This is our land. The reason why we have a constitution is to keep people in place and have a unity, if you will, and of humanity to everyone. Because remember, the modern Europeans, they were actually enslaved here on this land. They were born into slavery for real. The story is reversed. So this was to bring peace. And so we do have that duty to enforce it. But they will get off of the responsibility by saying, oh, no, he's talking about the bylaws. Well, if you have an organization, of course you're to enforce your bylaws, your constitution and bylaws. But that is another one of the reasons we haven't gotten as far as we need to get and will get. And when people outside of the temple, such as ourselves and others, start teaching about, enforcing law, enforcing the Constitution, they'll say that, we are, not, we're doing the wrong thing or whatever like that. And then what you'll find when you go into the temples, and this is another thing that has occurred, is they find that none of them are at all teaching law in any way, or they're not enforcing the Constitution. And they also I know I'm saying a lot here, but this is my last thing. They also don't deal with astrology, the science of the universe, but yet the prophet told you that let the solar stations be your guide. So I know people who will join into temples and they think they're going to get the studies of astrology, which they ought to get, and they don't get them either. So I wanted to kind of clear those two things up, especially the difference between the Constitution and bylaws as it relates to the Constitution of the law of the land, and explain to people why, they had to enforce the law of the land, of the American land. Because the prophet always said American, American. He didn't say, anything. When he talked about the Constitution, it was always the national Constitution, and it's for everyone. So I don't know if you had any comment about that, the or any experiences that you had from Moors at the temples that didn't understand what the Constitution of the law of the land, or the importance of enforcing the Constitution of the law of the land.
Well, before I go into that, I wanna know if Miz has anything he wants to drop before I.
Yeah. I just wanted to listen. I just want to say this. There's a lot to drop, right? We answered a lot. I think we already answered where's the temple, where's the temple and where you can find it as far as looking within,
Right here.
right?
Yep.
The, the concept of the temple being the body, right? That's recognized in the Library of Congress. There's an individual responsibility when it comes to the movement, like as individuals and as a collective. Whether the temple as an alternative or an exterior structure is concerned, and the first temple that makes these things manifest, which is the body of man, which one, solidifies you? I think you have it on the screen there, right? The true university. When it comes to every temple having a school, this is a statement that's in the Library of Congress on the East Coast and DC, so called DC. It says the true university of these days is a collection of books. When the question is asked, you know, why is it still important to have our own schools? It goes back to why is it important that we study? Why is it important that we have literature? Because the mission is to study, 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 not necessarily be, confined to a school or a classroom or, a college campus that's called a university, right? These are universal philosophies. So the true university of these days is a collection of books. And I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that RV Bay Publications, you definitely have a collection of books, that contribute to the true university in these days, according to the Library of Congress. And that concept is not something to be overlooked, right? Because there's many people who had school experiences, whether that be middle school, high school, college, whatever, in the past 2, 3 years, dealing with the so-called pandemic, and they had to find a way to make the knowledge sit with them. They had to find a way to figure it out, even without being able to go to school. So the true university is the information, the collection of books, right? And without the knowledge base, it doesn't matter how simple it is that you're dealing with things in life, whether that be, buying a new bed frame and putting it together. It's always a piece of literature that shows you
Right
how to
here.
do so. Circle
That's how
Seven,
we learn.
Holy Quran, Mecca, Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry, Moorish Literature, all of these different books. These are the true universities. Applicable knowledge. The concept of having our own schools, it boils down to, do we have our own libraries?
Yeah, that's exactly right. In order to change the people, you have to change their literature. So you're right. You'd have to have the, like I said, with the curriculums. Exactly. Exactly.
We have our
Yeah.
own libraries because that's the only true university in these days. As it relates to the Moorish Divine and National Movement, and what is the Moorish Divine and National Movement, and you got people arguing over the Moorish Science Temple of America and the Clock of Destiny, and these AA 222141 registered in the Library of Congress. If you go there to check all of that and you miss all of this on your way to check out whatever you think you're checking out, you are a fool right on. And as Noble Drew Ali said, the longer they stay in the schools, the more they defend jumping through the hoops. If the true university is a collection of books, then let's stick to the literature, the references that have already been documented and are there for, in perpetuity.
It always boils down to application. You don't need really the instructor or the enclosed classroom if you're really diligent about or passionate about whatever it is that you're trying to learn or perfect or get better at. If you have access to the literature and you have the mentality and the will and the drive to apply it, trust and believe me, that's the education that you need right there. The information is right here. You learn certain things, but you don't really learn them until you apply them. If man knows, he must be that which he knows. That's a universal principle. I don't care where you drop it at. You have to practically apply it at some point to be skillful at it.
All right. I think we got it. So we will see you all here, but at 7:30 our normal time.
A faded photograph I mailed to you with feelings I don't want to face, and a love song of surrender in blue. I remember when you took my breath away. Show so happy on, we were very young like butterflies, like hot butterflies. Show so happy on, we had just begun. We let it slide on by. Get real. All our memories are running in time, like a bittersweet perfume. Can you tell me how I love that so fine could have climaxed in a single afternoon? Sure, so happy on, we were very young like butterflies, like hot butterflies. Sure, so happy on, we had just begun. Let it slide in real show so happy on, show so happy on. Gone are the days of instant romance and the nights of slow goodbyes. That was a time